commercial agents go through, and we'll be talking about the leasing, a case study, an example, so that you guys can understand the process of leasing and the basic understanding and terminology of investment sales. So a little bit about myself, if you don't know who I am. Hold on here. So I'm JR Rigor. I started back in 2001 as an intern and worked my way up to research director, and then now I'm in brokerage for the past 5-6 years. I started with Marcus & Millichap. You guys are not familiar with that company. They do a lot of investment sales and a lot of, I would say, corporate transactions. They do multifamily retail office. So I started there in downtown LA back in 2002. And from 2007, I went to Charles Dunn Company. We did a lot of property management and leasing. And then I went to Marcus & Millichap back in 2010, did multifamily. And that's where I learned a lot about multifamily transactions, corporate transactions for multifamily. And then I went back to Charles Dunn as a research director, where I dealt with a lot of teams where to find phone numbers, owners, and see who would be the best case scenario for our clients. And from there, I went to Avison Young for a few months, did regional transactions with, I would say, office, retail, and now I'm at PW. Did a lot of transactions throughout the process. So I'm very familiar with all concepts of commercial, with leasing, property management, and investment sales. So if any of you have any questions with that, within these parameters, I feel free to give me a call and I can assist you. So our agenda today pretty much is what is commercial real estate. And commercial real estate is a broad range of, I would say, it's a broad range of business in real estate. And you'll understand it once I go through a couple of these slides, and it's very, you just have to understand what we have to go through if you are to pursue commercial real estate as a full-time occupation. Full-time meaning you do 75% of your transactions in commercial and 25% residential. That's what I'm doing right now too. So full-time commercial, you'll understand the concepts. And then from there, we'll do, let's say, this case study of leasing. We'll go through the process of, let's say, we'll work on a lease deal with a client, giving us the parameters, and then we'll go through the process and do the transaction one by one and see what we could do for our client based on their criteria. And then from there, I'll talk to you about the investment analysis, the very basic, just the fundamentals of understanding how to do the investment side of commercial real estate transactions. And we'll go through that, the financials, and so that you can have the understanding of terminology of net operating income, cap rate, and investment, initial investment based on cash on cash. So we'll talk about that today. First off, we'll do what is commercial real estate. It's a broad range of what we need to know in commercial real estate. So first off, commercial assets. There are 9 commercial asset classes that you should be familiar with, and here they are. Multifamily, 5+ or more units. The only difference between 2 to 4 and 5 or more is the loan. For 1 to 4, obviously it's going to be like single family resident loan. Multifamily 5+ would be more conventional loans. And there's different due diligence when you come to five or more units. You have to talk about the tenant estoppel, home inspections, due diligence period, stuff like that. It's a little more complex when five or more than 4 units. And then there's retail, office, industrial, hospitality, pretty much like hotels, motels, single resident occupancy. If you guys are not familiar with SRO, it's pretty much like studio type, and it's more month-to-month basis compared to hotels, motels. And then you got mixed use, like office with residential or retail with residential on top, stuff like that. That's considered mixed use. And then you got special purpose. Special purpose is like gyms, movie theaters, museums, schools, churches or religious facilities. That doesn't fall under hospitality or mixed use office. And then you got land development. Land development is very complex. You have to deal with a lot of contractors, architects, city officials, where you have to deal with. I would say zoning would be one issue that you have to go through with city councilmen to get approval. Development, architects, and it's very time consuming, but it's a good payday. And then you have business sales. A lot of you deal with clients who want to sell their business, especially at this point where it's tough with COVID, where they are closed and they want to sell their business and get out of that retail or that restaurant space. So that's considered a commercial as well. So that's pretty much all the commercial assets that we go through as a commercial agent. And the next slide, I would talk about I would say it's subdivided into categories. If you look into commercial agents out there, they have a title saying, specialize in single tenant or multi-tenant or tenant rep, landlord rep. So a lot of them, since commercial real estate is so large that if you specialize in all of these, you're going to spend most of your time learning or in class or trying to keep up to laws, regulations, rent control issues, and you're going to have to keep update on what's going on with these specialties. And so a lot of these commercial agents, they specialize in specialties, pretty much like owner-user, retail owner-user. For me in particular, I do multifamily sales, 5+ units. So I'm in that category right there on the top left. But there's other people that do specialize in just land development or business. And so it's whatever. If you guys want to do specialize in commercial, I'd suggest you pick one of these or pick a couple, but not all of them, because it's just very time consuming in regards to learning the basics. So next one is going to be the transaction process compared to residential. So single family residence, obviously a lot of you do a lot of residential sales. So process, tour homes, and you offer, and then you do the offer, and then escrow, due diligence, and then request for repairs, and then you close escrow. Commercial is a little different because there's 2 types. There's leasing and then there's sales. In sales and business, you do the tour, you look around, tour with your client. If they like it, you do a letter of intent. Once you do the letter of intent, You and the listing agent, or you and the buyer's agent, will go into escrow, and then the due diligence period, which usually takes about, I would say, 21 days for all cash to 60 days. Some will probably take 90 days, only because land issues like phase 1, phase 2, it varies depending on what type of class you guys are going to get into transaction, and then you close up escrow. Commercial leasing is a little different. You do the tour, and then you do the due diligence first before you get into escrow. We don't even go into escrow for a commercial lease. So due diligence, and then letter of intent, and then lease application, and then negotiations, and then lease signing. For a commercial lease, you don't go into escrow. You get a deal done possibly within a day, and then you receive your commission within 3 to 4 days. Sometimes it'll take a month, but sometimes it's quick. Like I had is Sammy on this call? Not sure. Let me see. Well, Sammy and I did a transaction about a few months ago where it took a day. We had a client that came in to tour the office space, and right then and there we did the negotiations, and then we signed the lease within 3 hours, and then we got a commission within 4 days after the paperwork. So stuff like that, where lease can go quickly, or it can go within a month, depending on depending on your tenant, your client. Restaurants are usually take a little longer. That's why for the next slide, we're going to do a case study of a restaurant deal, and I'll show you how the process goes with a commercial lease. So let's say, for example, we have a lease client, because I know a lot of you will, one time or another, will run into a client that needs assistance for a commercial lease. So this is a good practice for, let's say, for this one, we have a Southern Fried Chicken restaurant looking to lease in the Long Beach area. This is going to be their second location, dine-in and takeout, and this will be their requirement. 1,500 to 2,500 square foot, rent to be below 10,000 square foot, term 5 years, move-in ready, meaning it's going to be a second generation restaurant anywhere in the Long Beach area. And there's going to be different websites that you can look for to help find a space for them. So LoopNet and CoStar probably one of the most popular websites out there. LoopNet, you can sign up for free basic membership. Will cost you, this doesn't cost you anything, it's free. However, if you want to find, let's say, a premium membership would probably cost you about $20 a month, where you can find, let's say, it's very perplexed, where the landlord who doesn't want to pay premium, so they have a basic membership for a listing. You can't see it if you have a basic membership. You would have to have a premium to see to view the property. But if they do want to pay premium, you are able to see it. And then there's CoStar, which owns LoopNet. Yeah, they charge arm and a leg about $350 to $400 a month. Specializing, a lot of commercial agents pay for that. It's because it's a necessity. It's like MLS for residential agents for a CoStar membership. So I highly suggest, if you were to work on a commercial deal, it's best to work with a commercial agent where they have access to this and have access to CoStar, so that you can find all the properties that's available out there instead of just the basic membership from LoopNet. And there's other programs out there that are free, like Crexy. You can go to www.crexy.com, and just sign up. It's free. You can get all the properties that agents put on there, and it's not as good as MLS in regards to residential, but it's Crexy is one of the best ones, and LoopNet. Then there's Digsy. Digsy, it's getting popular. It's one of the up and coming websites that it's very useful because it's free. Just sign up, same thing, sign up, and you can do your own searches. Same thing with RealNex. RealNex is also free, and it's not as it's getting popular too. It's just like Digsy, but it's not as popular as LoopNet. Then again, you get what you pay for. And then for you agents, there's MLS. I mean, not a lot of clients or tenants will go and have access to MLS. So for you residential agents, it benefits us that we can find what's available out there to whoever has an MLS account. And let's do an example of let's say LoopNet. Let's show you this listing. Can you guys see this? Are you guys able to see this listing? Okay.
No.
All right. So this is a restaurant deal in Long Beach that
I don't see it.
you don't see it?
No, it's just black screen.
Okay, hold on. How about this?
It's all black.
Is it?
Now we can.
Okay.
Guys,
Perfect. Okay. So this would fit the criteria that we were doing with the case study. It's a restaurant deal in Long Beach that shows, 2,404 square feet, second generation kitchen. Perfectly, it's ideal for our client, our make-believe client. From this, we can normally, if we do find a property like this, and it says term negotiable rate upon request, we give the agent a call and we ask questions. Just a heads up, if you're, if this is your first time doing a commercial deal, a lot of times these commercial agents who's I would say seasoned, they'll know if you're a residential agent or a seasoned commercial agent by questions. And one of the first things to ask for is it still available? And once you ask that question, they'll be like, yes, it'll be available. And then you start generating more questions, like what were the previous tenants? How much did they pay rent? What's the reason why they moved out? And then from there, we can say, okay, what are the rental rates? How much is the rent? And from there, you can start going further and say, okay, what is the landlord looking into term? Like, how long of a term are they looking into? And then from there, they'll start saying, they'll start opening up, and they'll say, oh, why don't you guys set up a tour? And once we do a tour, we'll, and then from there, submit all the LOIs and see what comes up for this property. So this is an example, perfect for our client. So that's just an example. There are plenty more. If you go to LoopNet, you'll see stuff like this. And I'm not too sure if you guys are familiar with triple net, full service gross. So I'm going to talk about that next. Let's see. Can you guys see this? The presentation?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right. So rental rate terminology. Triple net. It's normally, tenant pays for the insurance, CAM, property tax. Rent is usually lower for the tenant because tenant pays for the triple net fees: property tax, common area maintenance, and real property tax. Full service gross, the landlord pays for all the operation, all the costs of operating the business or the building, including CAM, property tax, utilities, trash, janitorial, but the tenant pays for higher rent. And then there's modified, pretty much it's negotiable with the landlord and the tenant. So it's pretty much sharing, negotiating the expenses such as property insurance, CAM, real property tax, janitorial, trash. And same thing goes for industrial gross, IG. But it's mainly for industrial properties, very similar to modified gross. So if you go to LoopNet, CoStar, all the commercial websites, they'll say triple net, FSG, MG, IG. This is what comes up, and so you don't have to ask them. And for them to understand that you're a residential agent, you ask them this. One of your questions is when you call them and say, okay, it's triple net. What are the triple net fees? And then they'll tell you, oh, it's 75 cents per square foot. And then you can just calculate that with the base rent. Just include that with the base rent. That's your monthly for the year. And then from there you can calculate 3% annual every year, stuff like that. So that's the rental rate terminology, if you guys ever come across that. And then after you give a call, inquire about the property, you do your due diligence, because in commercial lease, you do your due diligence first before you go into negotiations and such, because you don't want to waste your time if this property doesn't make sense. And so due diligence first. You ask the landlord or the owner for approval. You tell the listing agent, hey, my client wants to open up a Southern fried seafood restaurant in this location, but yet there's a same genre about 3 properties away, and he's gonna let you know. Like, hey, there's Southern fried seafood 3 doors down, Popeyes. Are you okay with that? You'd be like, no, okay, it won't make sense for us to open up 3 doors down. But if everything is good, you just get landlord approval saying that, oh yeah, it's going to be fried food, and then you get their approval and say yes. You go to zoning and see if the zoning makes sense for a restaurant space, because if it's an R1 and you need a conditional use permit, it just takes so much time to get approval from the city that in time it just wouldn't make sense, because you're going to be paying rent while you're doing your tenant improvement or waiting for approval from the city, and then you already signed your lease agreement, and to find out that it will not work because of the zoning, your client will be screwed pretty much. So each city will have their own, I would say, planning and zoning. City of LA, Long Beach, they have their own, but the best thing to do is give them a call and see if that would make sense. Let's see here. You guys able to see this one? The development services? I just clicked up.
Yes, we can see.
Okay. So these are pretty much like the zoning for Long Beach. For this property, it should fall under commercial, which is down here. You see my screen, my mouse?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So for this property, the one in Long Beach, if this would probably fall under C. So if you click on that, it'll say it will allow restaurant use. So other cities like Lomita, Lawndale, they don't have this type of capabilities. So it's best to give them a call and find out for your client, see if that would make sense, if it falls under their jurisdiction of restaurant space. So you see here, where it says alcohol beverage manufacturing. Just do your due diligence for your client. They'll appreciate it. I mean, they can do it themselves if they're a corporate restaurant, but if they're a mom and pop, it's best. I mean, it gives you a gold star for them if you were to do this for them. So it's a lot of cities will have this. Long Beach, City of LA, Torrance will have this. So if not, just give them a call. That'd be the fastest and quickest way of doing it. So that's the zoning. And then next is parking requirements. Some cities, they're very strict with parking, with their business permits. And for a restaurant space, you need to have a certain parking space to open up a business. And if you don't, and you sign that lease agreement, it's the same thing as zoning. It won't make sense for the client to open up and take time to get the permits, and they're going to be paying rent and with waiting for the permit, and then to find out that it's not going to work out for them. So it's best to do this. I clicked on the link and it's still running. Give me a second here. So yeah, it's freezing up. Hold on here. Yeah, so certain cities, let's say for example, restaurant space, they require 5 spaces per 1,000 square foot use on a restaurant. So if you do a 2,000 square foot restaurant, obviously you're going to need 10 parking spaces. And it's the city of Long Beach here. Give me a second. Yeah, sometimes the city of Long Beach website, they just take forever. Here we go. You guys see this? Where it shows, okay, parking requirements for a number of spaces. For example, let's see here, here, where it says dinner restaurant. If you see table 41, 1C, dinner restaurant is 10 per 1,000 square foot gross, meaning for a restaurant that we're using, it would need 20 parking spaces. But however, there are some cities where they allow street parking to be counted. That's the case for our example. Since it's in the Long Beach, I would say downtown parameters, they will be lenient upon parking spaces. So if there's only like 3 parking spaces on site, they will allow street parking. It's just like the downtown Torrance or downtown LA, where if you're in the street, you're in a storefront, and there's plenty of street parking, they'll allow that. So I mean, depending on city, and for our case, it will allow. So it's stuff like this where you want to do the due diligence for parking as well, and it'll benefit you and benefit the client as well. So next is pretty much once we do our due diligence, we do the letter of intent and the application process. So an LOI, a letter of intent, let me show you an example. Here you go. So here's a sample of my letter of intent. So it's pretty much just a draft of what your client is intending on leasing up the space, so that it's much clearer than going straight to the lease agreement, or pretty much, yeah. So that you can negotiate with the listing agent or the landlord. So I already pre-drafted this as an example for us. So for our premises, we usually do, put the address, square feet, our tenant, so that the listing agent will be aware of who's going to lease, and landlord, term, starting date, delivery, base rent. Let's say, for example, we called the agent up and we said it's going to be $2 per square foot, triple net with 3% annual increase. And then from there, we have the rent schedule, base rent. And here we go, 5 years. So we have it at $250 a square foot, 2,400 square foot, 75 cent triple net will give us a total monthly base rent of X amount. And this would be our period commencement date, period ending date. Just so that we could give the landlord or the listing agent a heads up. This is what we're intending to pay. And then from there, if everything goes through, we'll do the application process. So security deposits, etc. Just a basic, it's a formality for a lease, for a commercial lease. And then of course you want to get paid. So when you give this to your or the listing agent, they're aware that we're asking 3%. You can go 5%, see if they allow that. I mean, it won't hurt. So that's pretty much it. And then again, the verbiage saying that, oh, this is just a non-binding contract, and sign it on behalf of our client. So this is a sample. If you want a sample, email me. I'll send you an example of this LOI. So we can, then feel free to give me a call or email for any questions. So after that, after the letter of intent, we go through the application process, pretty much like a residential lease, where you submit a application, a rental application form, basic information, social security number, who's the tenant leasing it up, if they have any history, stuff like that, just basic information on the tenant. And then the landlord will most likely ask for tax return, bank statements, and statement of information if it's a business entity. That you can go on the website, this Secretary of State website, get the information on that, LLC or a corp. And from there, submit it to the listing agent for approval. Within 3-4 days, they'll get back to you and say, can we get some more information, or this is okay, this is good, and then we go to negotiations. So negotiations for a lease, we normally, it would take between a few days to about a week, depending on how good the landlord and the tenant is and communications. And then from there, once approved, you go into a lease agreement, and then you go to signing. Again, it can take 1 to 2 days to even a week, maybe 2 weeks for a lease transaction. And then you get paid within a week after that, depending on when the landlord sends the check or when you get your paperwork done. So it goes quick for a commercial lease. So next is investment analysis. These terms are what makes an investment analysis work, and you get to understand the basics, of the metric system of the investment sales. I mean, I can do another 2-hour class just on investment analysis, key terms alone. So, but these 6 are pretty much or 7, including GRM, or gross rent multiplier. It's not on here, but I can explain it if you guys want to go forward with GRM. But these are the main key terms when you analyze an investment analysis. And we'll go through a few examples to get an understanding on this analysis. So I'm sure you guys seen this if you guys do investment if you go on LoopNet, you look up property and you see all these numbers and you say, okay, how do we even figure out how to calculate this? This is one of the properties available for sale in, I guess it was Long Beach or South LA, listed by Marcus and Millichap. It's a, I think it was a 6-unit complex. It tells you gross operating, gross potential rent, vacancy factor, net operating income, expenses. These are the basic things that you see when you do, if you have a client interested in purchasing an investment sale, you'll come across this for sure. This is for a multifamily. This one's for retail. You know, I don't know if you guys are familiar with this area. This is right across the street on Hawthorne Boulevard. It's a office building, office/retail, where they have the same, you know, framework, scheduled income. These are the rents, and these are the annualized income, gross potential rent minus vacancy. This is the basic framework on an investment analysis. You'll have to understand this. You're gonna have to. I'll give you guys a breakdown on how to analyze these and what's the most important in analyzing this and getting familiar with this type of framework.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
The difference between somebody buys a commercial building, like for example, this building, to an investor,
Mhm.
than to buy, for example, 4 units. What are the benefits to the investors as far as the incomes, tax savings, on and on and on? What is which one, you know, works better for an investor that wants to start fresh?
It all depends on the investor. What's their end game? What are they trying to do? Are they looking long term? Are they looking flipping? Are
No,
they
no, long term.
Yeah, are they keeping it, you know, 2, 3 years, 4 years, maybe 5?
Yes.
Depending on the investor, what's their, you know, what's their game plan? Are they gonna buy it low, flip it, keep it for a year, sell it, where they can, you know, put some capital improvements on it, and then sell it high, depending on what they want to do.
Right now, the market with all these commercials that are available,
Yeah.
is it a market to flip or is it a market to keep? I mean, of course, as you said, it depends on the investment, but in general, what is the mentality?
For mentality wise, depending on, again, on the class, let's say for retail, it's going to become very difficult to, you know, flip, only because tenancy is going to be very difficult, especially if you have restaurant space that you can't, you know, you can't find a tenant, or they're not paying rent. But if you were to do multifamily, on the other hand, if one comes across a vacant space where they want to improve, yeah, it's ideal, especially at this time where, you know, multifamily, it's always in demand, where people need to find a place to live.
Even with all the rent controls and stuff, still is a good investment?
It's still a good investment. Anywhere you go, it's a good investment. It's just a matter of time. You know, for LA County, where it's 3 to 4% annual increase. But then again, if it's vacant, you do the, you know, the improvements, and then you go at market or even a little higher than market, depending on your client on vacancy. If they do on market, it'll generate income.
Okay.
And especially now, where I would say a lot of homes may be coming available in the next year, 2, 3 years, because, you know, it varies on mortgage. They may want to sell and they can't afford to sell because they got laid off, they're gonna go back into renting. It's gonna make sense for multifamily, especially
I
with 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, stuff like that. So, good question.
Thank you.
Yeah. So here's another example. I mean, if you guys are familiar with this location as well, it's here in the South Bay. This is one of my off-market listings. Mine, Kevin, and Leanne's. I mean, it gives you a breakdown of the revenue, net operating income. That's one of the key factors is net operating income. And you find expenses, generate, is this worth it for our client? So these type of financials are very crucial when you talk to your client. And I'm going to talk to you about the framework and how to calculate, how to understand it, so that you have the knowledge when you talk to a client. Be like, hey, this is a great investment, and from there they'll gain your trust once you talk more financials with them. So this is one of the examples. So let's talk about the framework. So when you do a calculation, you first have to do the actual rental income. You have to find out how much it generates based on the rents, and that's other I would say another name for it would be gross scheduled income. So what you do is you ask the agent or the seller or the owner for the rent roll. For a 5-6 unit, they'll say, okay, our rents for the month would total out to like 9,660 a month. So that's pretty much like a rental income, and then you do an annualized. So this is one of the first I guess the calculations is when you do the actual rental income. And then after this, you do the losses. Losses can be a vacancy factor, depending on an area where they're asking rent. That will determine the vacancy factor or location. Let's say Redondo Beach, South Torrance, or Hermosa Beach, where the vacancy factor will be like around 2 to 3% of the actual rental income. Or you go further east to the Inland Empire, where it's 5%. A lot of agents do 5% vacancy factor based on their scheduled income. So we do that as losses. So the more desirable areas, the lower the factor. And then other income, we put a plus on that. It's pretty much like additional income, like a laundry room or additional storage areas that landlords will ask for. So that's pretty much like a additional income. So we put a plus on it. And then after that, we do expense recovery. A lot of times for retail, they do triple net fees. So the landlord will pay for expenses, utilities, property tax, CAM charges. And then, once the tenants pay for their share of triple net fees, that's considered, and then the landlord receives it, that's considered recovery income. Pretty much that crosses out whatever expenses the landlord pays for those income, those taxes or those insurance fees. So that's considered a plus because it pretty much generates income for the landlord. And does this make sense? Because I don't want to go too fast for you guys. If you guys good?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
Perfect. So next would be operating expenses. I'll talk more about what's considered operating expenses, but it's pretty much like insurance, gardening, repairs and maintenance, common area utilities, management costs. These are all considered operating expenses where monthly fees,
I think Amir has question. He's
Oh,
saying,
okay.
yeah.
Amir? How do we? Okay. Oh, well, if you guys have further questions, and I mean, let me know, because I don't see any questions on here.
Oh, he said no question.
Oh, okay. All right, cool.
He's just
Okay.
not very smart.
All right. So minus operating expenses, that will give you the net operating income. And that's one of the main factors. I mean, this is pretty much like the holy grail of calculating analysis for your investment property. So once you calculate the NOI and then the price of the property, that'll give you the cap rate for the property. We'll talk more about the cap rate a little later, but that pretty much gives you the value of what the property is worth. And later on, I'll explain to you how we can play or adjust the pricing based on net operating income and then the market cap rate. And from there, we can adjust the pricing on property. So after we figure out the net operating income or the NOI, we do capital expenses. So pretty much capital expenses are improvements to the property. For example, replacing the HVAC, 15,000. We can put that here in capital expenses. So we can you minus that. Like hardwood flooring, anything that adds value to the property. New bathrooms for one. That'll be included here in the capital expenses. And then from there, we do mortgage payments or annual debt service. I don't know if you guys hear that all the time, annual debt service or mortgage payments, stuff like that. It's the total amount of how much mortgage you pay annually. You minus that with the capital expenses, and that would give you the net cash flow. And that would be, everything will be annualized. I'll show you a better example a bit later with numbers. So if everything you do in real estate and commercial investments, you'll deal with this framework. So this is pretty much I highly recommend that you understand this. Actual rental income minus losses plus other income plus expense recovery income minus operating expenses will give you NOI, and minus capital expenses minus mortgage will give you cash flow. And I'll give you guys a better example in a little bit. This is just a framework of understanding of these financial analyses. So here it is again. Again, it's net operating income and cash flow, and then we'll also talk about, let's say, the initial investment, which will bring up cash on cash. I'll explain more of that in detail, but if you were to do a loan and you want to find out what your initial investment is worth, this is where we're going to talk about is the loan. Purchase price plus acquisition cost plus loan cost minus loan amount will give you the initial investment. So NOI, net cash flow, and initial investment will be the ones that we're mainly going to be talking about. And I'm sure you guys have heard of cash on cash. It's pretty much a metric on how much, if your client was to invest on X amount, he wants to find out how much is he going to get back in an annual basis. And initial investment, it would be a key factor for that. And I'll explain more to you in a little bit. So we'll do an example. 340 West 11th Street in San Pedro. Sale price is 1.395, 6 units. It's on LoopNet. If you guys ever want to take a look, just go on loopnet.com and search out this property. It'll give you, the rent roll. It'll give you some information on it. Here's the rent roll for it. I did a this research on it already. So we got the unit mix and the scheduled income, and then operating expenses. I'll explain to you the property expenses. So pretty much operating expenses are property tax. We don't usually go by the owner's property tax because they may have bought it 20 years ago, and they're probably paying the assessed value 20 years ago. So the standard amount is usually 1.25% of the asking price. So that's what we calculate. And from there, we ask the listing agent or the owner, excuse me, what they pay for insurance, utilities. Sometimes utilities are low only because tenants pay their own, they have their individually metered gas, water, or electric. So we ask the agent, the listing agent or the owner, hey, are tenants paying their own, or are they individually metered, or are you paying it? So you can tell by how much utilities they pay. If it's low, obviously it's going to be tenants pay for it. Same thing with trash. Operating expenses. Trash is considered operating expense. So it's gardening, repairs and maintenance, property management, and on-site management. And I did a calculations already. So for this property, for year one, or currently, it's the operating expense is $34,140. So these numbers, and as well as the actual, we'll go through with it as a sample a bit shortly. And we can calculate if this investment is worth it for a client, based on the metrics that we have. So again, here's the framework: potential income, NOI, cash flow, and we normally get some financing terms from a lender, or you can even do your calculations to it to see what best fits, or what's the average in the area for a loan amount, interest rates, terms. So in this case, I already did the research for financing. So if it's priced at 1.395, do a 50% loan amount, it's $697,500 would be a loan. 4% interest, 30 years would give us a monthly payment of a monthly mortgage of $3,330. So, and then here, so what we did was for the gross potential income, we multiplied our scheduled rent times 12 would give us $79,536 annualized. So any questions so far? I don't want to be too quick. Okay, so far that's what we have for scheduled income. And then a vacancy factor. If you want to do calculations, 5% of 79,536 would give us 3,977, vacancy factor of 5%. So again, our potential rental income is 79 minus losses would be 3,977, and then we go to other income. Let's say for this example would be laundry. So they receive about 7,536 annually for laundry. It could be also storage too, depending on the property. But in this case, laundry is their other income. And then from there, expense recovery. Since I would say tenants pay their own expenses, and it's not retail where it's triple net, and the landlord receives additional income. It's pretty much they don't have any expense recovery, so this would be a zero. And then operating expenses, again, operating expenses, it's 34,140 from our previous slide. So this would be considered a minus from the gross potential income, would give us a net operating income of 48,955, right? And since we found out that they haven't done any capital expenses such as new roof, new HVAC, new bathrooms, nothing new and improved. So we do zero for capital expenses. Again, if they do a new HVAC, it would be minus 15,000, for example. So that'd be minus that to the NOI. But in this case, it's be zero. And then our mortgage payments, 3,330 times 12 would give us 39,960. And that would be a minus to the NOI, would give us a net cash flow, an annual of 8,996. So now that we have the net operating income, we can calculate cap rate. And cap rate is pretty much NOI divided by the asking price. In this case, NOI is 48,955 divided by 1.395 would give us a 3.1% cap rate. You guys follow? Okay.
Is it a good one? Is it a reasonable return?
For a 3.1 cap, depending on the area, and depending also again on what's the lender, the owners or the buyers, business plan. If he's trying to keep this long term, it'd be okay, a 3.1. But if he was to flip and sell within, I would say, a year, honestly, no. Only because it's a 3.5% cap at 1.395, it wouldn't make sense. And you can play around with the rents. It looks like it would be for another class, but I would explain to you guys. For the current rents based on the pro forma, this would be considered a value add. If you guys are familiar with value add, meaning there's value to it if you add, capital expense. For example, new HVAC or redo the flooring, and then wait till these tenants move out, and then you do the renovations, and then you add the rents up. You increase the rents to market rents. It looks like there's potential on the rents for this property. Let me go back to the slide of the rent roll.
The rent control doesn't apply to investments, huh?
Depends on the area. Like,
LA County?
Yeah, LA County. I mean, there's rent control for LA County, which is 3%. I think what it is right now, 3 to 4.
But does it apply to the commercial?
It does. It does. Because it's multifamily.
Okay, I see. Okay.
It's 3 to 4% for LA County, and for, I would say, the non, for LA County or City of LA, I would say, has a rent control of 3 to 4%. But they have that new AB 18 something, where it's annual increase of 4 or 5%. That is for like Gardena, outside of LA, City of LA, Gardena, Hawthorne, where they limit the rent control to, it used to be non-rent control. Now it's 4 to 5%, I think, it's annual increase. But that's only if there's a tenant there's a tenant occupying the space. But if they do move out and you bump up the rent to market rents, that's fine. There's no limit to that. But if there's a tenant involved, it's only you're limited to increase. So for this one, for this example, you see how the rents are, they're actual compared to market. I mean, you can do your homework with these unit mixes. You, sometimes these agents will bump up pro forma rents or market rents to more than it should be. So you do your homework and see what would be the best case scenario for pro forma. And you can see that, total is 66,280 for actual, and market is 9,550. So this would pretty much be a value add. If let's say one tenant moves out and then you put it back to market, put it up to market, and you sell it in the future at 9,550 a month, and then sell it at an average cap rate of 3.5, that's going to obviously bump up the value to 1.4 or 1.5, depending. So that's another class. It's more complex in regards to assumptions and value add. So
my personal experience, in investments,
Mhm.
when you buy multi-family, and I have, a couple of, at the time when you buy them, there's not much positive income coming from it. But as you hold on, as you said, as you value added, tenant moves out, you improve, but then there's the potential for up increasing your income is definitely there in Southern California, I'll say.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, excuse me. Depending on the property, and depending if you're consistent upon increasing rents or adding value to it, like adding a garage, where you can charge your tenants monthly, monthly for renting out the garage, the closure, or laundry rooms. Stuff like that will add value to it in the future. And value that's considered a value add. If you want to keep
Right.
it long term, it'd be more ideal with any type of cap rate. But if you were to fix and flip, 3.5% is okay. It's a little low only because of the price. If you want to fix and flip, ideally it'd be a 4.5 to 5% cap. So if you have an investor looking at a deal that's a 5 cap, that's the reason why. That's why they want to look something at a 5% cap rate compared to something low like this. This one's more, if someone wants to do a 1031 exchange, if you guys are familiar with 1031 exchange, they're selling their old property for a new property, and they're just tax, it's a tax incentive, and they want to look long term. And something like this, it's good long term because there's a lot of possibilities with this property to increase your income.
Nice.
I mean, yeah, 3.1 is it's a little low, but again, there's potential on this property.
Mhm.
So again,
Is there room for negotiation in the price or no?
it depends. Honestly, it all depends on the seller. You can talk to them and say, oh, hey, cap rates in this area are at 4.5% cap, San Pedro, and you can say, why are you at 3.5?
Right.
I mean, there's other reasons for them. They can say, well, I did some, I increased some rents, or I did this, I did that. I mean, it all depends on the seller. They may have the reasons. They may be motivated. It all depends. I didn't really talk to the listing agent, but I mean, I think what they're doing is, since San Pedro is up and coming, they're trying to value it 2 years from now,
I see.
because of the development out there. And since this is really close to the development, they're saying, oh, I mean, it's Inglewood pretty much. Everything's at a 3.5, 4%. That's what they're thinking. But in reality, I mean, they're all based on numbers. It all makes sense for an investor that they want to pay the now prices instead of 2 years from now prices. Stuff like that, but it varies. So,
Thank
and
you.
yeah, so again, it's, I mean, this is what we do. We do the net operating income divided by the cap rate will give you the value of the property. So it makes sense to know, the net operating income. And if you want to see what the actual value is, you do the market cap rate, since our property that we did is at 3.5, let's say the cap rate's at 4%. So if we do net operating income divided by the market cap rate, the value of the property is going to be probably 1.25. So that's one way we can calculate this type of property, is do a reverse calculation. That's how we do value.
So in order for this to have a decent cap rate, they have to sell it for 1.1.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's multiple ways of doing the value. We can say, net operating income. If we do at market rents, that increases the net operating income. And then if we do the cap rate of market cap rate, obviously the value of it will be 1.1, 1.15, depending. I mean, if you increase the income at market cap rate, yeah, we can determine the actual value of it. So that's how we do the calculation on metric of value. We can play around with the net operating income and the cap rate, and from calculating this and showing your client, you have the knowledge of doing the calculations and figuring out the value, the actual value or the potential value. That gives you a gold star for your client, pretty much. And also too, cash on cash return. If you were to calculate the net cash flow with the initial investment, and you figure out if it makes sense for your client, the cash on cash return it gives you a plus on your name, pretty much. And I'll show
I have
you
a quick question. I have a quick question.
Yeah.
For each area, we should find a cap rate. Is there any cap rate for each area? For example, for the Torrance, do we have a cap rate for the area of Torrance, or for each property we need to identify and calculate the cap rate?
Actually, no, you don't. There's no general cap rate matrix in a specific area. So what you do, the best way to do it is you go to LoopNet or even MLS, and you look at what's on the market, or better yet, if you're on MLS and go and do what's been sold on specific properties. Let's say, for example, a 6-unit, you do MLS, you do a search for 5 to 6 units, and you do and then you just scroll around and see what the cap rates are, what you see. If you see like 4.5, you see 4.7, 4.8. You conclude that, okay, the average cap rate there is 4.7. And from there, you can determine the average cap rate in the area. You just have to be knowledgeable with the market and follow the trends, and you just follow. For example, let me show you.
You mean that we need to analyze the market data, gather the market data in the almost same property, and after that you find the average cap rate for each, for that property that we subjected.
Yes, yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, it's pretty much for investment sales. You follow the market, and you try to follow the trends of what the market cap rates are. Let me show you an example of how to follow the market here. Give me a second. I'll show you what I have. Give me a second. Can you guys see this?
Yes,
You guys see the Excel sheet?
yes, we can see.
Okay, so pretty much this is what I follow in the Inglewood, Gardena, Hawthorne area. And you see how these are on the market. These are on market in November 2020. You see how the cap rate averages. I pretty much follow that market, these properties, and the average cap rate for these three cities, Gardena, Hawthorne, Inglewood, is 4.3% for these markets. And also for solds, I follow within an annual basis. So pretty much the average cap rate sold in these areas is 4.5%. So stuff like this, where you follow your market, your area of responsibility, it shows you the average cap rates in the area. So if you were, I mean, that's the reason why, if you were to do commercial real estate, have somebody in that area, specialty is multifamily. They'll explain to you the average cap rate, sold cap rate, and here's an example for these three cities, where sold cap rates 4.5, on market cap rates 4.3, which shows you that they sell, let's say for example, $1 million. They have it on the market for $1 million at a 4.3 cap rate, and they sell it at a 4.5% cap rate, so 20 basis points. They sell it, and so that meaning that their price is lower than they're asking, or their sold price is lower than they're asking. Follow me?
Yeah, sold price is lower than the asking price.
Exactly, and that explains it. I mean, obviously, for these properties, previously list price,
So they're negotiating down the values.
Exactly. So
they're listing them too high.
Exactly. A lot of them. That's the reason why, these, like this one, for example, on Inglewood, they have a 3.1 cap rate. They've listed it, and still on the market, stuff like that, or a 3.3 cap here in Hawthorne. It's still on the market. So stuff like that, where you try to analyze the market and try to understand the cap rates. And you can do this on MLS, or you can even look around LoopNet and see what are the average in that area. You can just, look and see, compare and contrast properties with the subject property and see what the average is.
And these are all 4+ units.
These are all 5+.
5+ units. Okay.
Yeah, 5 to 12. I'm trying to limit it because so follow it much better. And yeah, so it's pretty much here. So that's what I have, buyer, seller, broker, and gives you the example of what's sold. You see a lot of them are in the 4s or high 4s, even 5s. So following the market or understanding the market will give you a plus with your client.
Mm-hmm.
So
I have a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
For the new development, for example, there's a lot of new development, 20 units, 50 units, 100 units. How much is the cap rate for that? Is it because I saw that some of them the property is 1961, 1966.
For development?
Yeah.
Depending. The best way, because depending on if they are, let's say, if they are vacant, and if they're newly developed, what the best way you can do is you can do pro forma. How much are these rents? Assumed how much these rents are for let's say the new development 2019 or 2020 built. You can do a pro forma of how much you think these will be worth, and then you do the framework of specific.
My question.
My question is, who the agent should do that job? Is the owner asking the agent to find the cap rate for me, or the property management, or who is the exactly what's duty? And as a responsibility of the agent, or who is responsible, or broker?
It's the listing agent's responsibility. If they want to get it sold, that's the best way to do it, is have the listing agent do it. But if you're representing the buyer, it's best you do your own due diligence, only because you may not want to rely on their pro forma. They can have their own, depending on their experience. If they're brand new or not knowing the area, if they're an agent in the San Fernando Valley doing a listing down here, and they have a pro forma for a 2-bedroom, 1-bath in, let's say, for example, Torrance, and they're doing, the pro forma is $1,300 a month. Obviously, if you're in South Torrance, $1,300 for a 2-bedroom, that doesn't make sense. So you want to compare and contrast what they have and what you have. So my suggestion is, yeah, the listing agent should do their homework and they have the responsibility for doing that, but you also have your own responsibility to do your own due diligence too as well. Make sense?
Right, thanks.
Yeah, okay, so let's, where we at here? Yeah, give me a second. So we have this. Okay, so we're here on cash on cash. Pretty much cash on cash is also just another metric on finding if it's a valuable, or it's value to our client. And from that, it's net cash flow divided by initial investment. So we pretty much have that. So we'll talk about that in the next slide here. So value, again, the value, if we do NOI divided by cap rate, we can play around with the value. Again, from what Farah's question was, if let's say, for example, hold on here. Can you see my calculator? Okay, so let's say, for example, we're going to play around with the NOI. Let's say, for example, we increase the rent to 50,000. Can you guys see this? Okay.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, so if we do 50,000 NOI divided by the 3.51 cap rate, that would give us a value of, hold on, 50,000 divided by 0.0351, it's 3.51%. So that would give us a value of the property at 1.424. Follow me? However, if, let's say, we increase the rent, the net operating income to 50,000, however, the cap rate in the area is at 4.5. Sarah's right. The price would be at 1.1. Follow me? So that's one way we can play around with the value and NOI and cap rate. Is just play around with the numbers and see what the right value is for this property. And so that's how to calculate the value, reverse calculations. And then next, we do cash on cash. So pretty much cash on cash, we already have, again, here's the framework. Net cash flow divided by the initial investment, which is, if we were to do a loan, we do the calculations. So here's a sample of an example of initial investment. Let's say, for example, we do the purchase price of 1.395, correct? And then we do an acquisition. We have acquisition costs, home inspections, appraisal fees, termite work that we have to pay. So it adds up to, say, for example, 7,500. So we add that along with a loan cost. So loan costs are usually, a point for the loan that your client does, to get this purchase. Usually 1% of the loan amount. Let's say we do a loan amount for 697,500. Your client gets charged for 1% to get that loan. So he pays, 6,975 just for the loan. So we add that minus the loan amount, the total loan amount, which is 697,500, which will give our client the total investment that he'll put in for we total to 711,975. So that's going to be his initial investment, correct? That's from the example that we were doing earlier at a 50% loan amount. So for cash on cash return, we do net cash flow. This is his annual net cash flow of 8,996. And then you divide that by 711,975, which will, if you do the calculations, will give us a 1.26% cash on cash return. So anybody know if that's high or low? A 1.26.
Low.
Exactly. So with the loan of 50%, we'll give them 711 initial investment. We'll give them a cash on cash. This is an annual, year one, 1.26%. The average for LA County is 3%. A good investment, national for a good investment would be 8 to 10% cash on cash.
Wow.
So you tell me if this is a good investment.
So what happens to these properties that have such a low cash on cash return? So would people still buy these?
People would still buy it, depending on, again, their end game. What's their business plan on how are they going to do this? What are they going to do? A lot of times for something like this, it would be a 1031 exchange.
I see.
For someone who's doing a 1031 exchange, they sell their other property, buy this, renovate it, increase the rent, which will increase their cash on cash return to possibly, if they were to do it at market value, give them about a 2.5%, 3%, which is average normal for the state, for the county. So 1.26 is would it make sense? I mean, because if you do, if you run a calculator, you run a calculator at 8,996 divided by 12, you get $749 a month before taxes, monthly income. You see, the benefit of this, if you purchase it, is equity, pretty much. This is all pure equity in the long term. So whoever wants to buy this is going to be a long-term buyer. Got me?
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, it's at 749 and monthly income minus tax, depending on your tax bracket. Let's just say half of this is going to be 375 a month income. But then again, your equity grows in the future. So whoever wants to buy this will keep it long term for 5 years, and then for 5 years they can leverage this property and buy another property, or sell this and go to the next one.
I have a quick question. This 8,996. This is this net cash flow is the income.
What do you mean?
Income is income for property. Net, it is cash in or cash out. My question is, it is for if this is the income for that property?
Yeah, it's income for the property. This is annual. $8,996
for that property.
for this property, exactly.
And it shows that 1.26% have a return rate.
Yes, 1.26 return rate.
And you recommend to the investor that they purchase this one
Yes, yeah, you
with,
can,
with opportunity of improvement.
yeah, exactly, with the opportunity for improvement. But as is at 1.26. Again, there are variables to this property.
Mhm.
You don't know what's wrong with it. You know, for example, you don't know what's wrong with the plumbing. That's not included in the expenses.
My question is, how much for you as an expert, if you are going to give a a judgment, you are going to say how much is the ideal? Is it 3%, 4%, 5%, or it depends?
For which one?
For this property, you see that, for example, is somebody going to investment and ask it how much cash on cash return is good for me? You are going to say for him 3% or 4%.
He said 8 to 10%.
No, that's national.
Oh, I see.
Again, it's California's different from the nation.
Right. What is the
Um,
average for California?
Yeah,
I mean, they're decent.
3% is average for LA County.
Okay.
3% for LA.
I'm sorry?
3% for LA County.
Yeah, 3%. It's between 2.5 to 3% LA County, 3% for Orange County.
Great.
Those are the rough estimates on cash on cash.
What is the, if somebody asks us that, what is it's going to be almost 3%.
Yeah. So what you do if you were to talk to your client, if you want to bump up this 1.26%, if you want to bump it up, there's variables to it. You can say you can increase the rent, you can negotiate the asking price, we can do capital improvements,
Right.
stuff like that, where your cash on cash will increase.
Yeah, but when you do capital improvement, you're already adding additional cost.
Yeah.
That is going to reduce your cash on cash also.
Yeah. There's a possibility that it'll reduce your cash on cash or your initial investment, but if your investor is going to look long term, year 2, your cash on cash is going to probably bump up to 1.75.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, depending on how much income you're going to receive for doing the capital improvements, but if right now, if their rents are $1,100 and the market is at 1,700, one of these tenants move out, you can do your capital improvements, put in 15, 20,000. In through 2-3 years, your cash on cash will bump up.
Right. So you are going to have negative for
Yeah.
at least next few years, and then you start getting some profit from it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It again, it
So
depends
it's
on.
not an immediate income producing type of property.
No. Yeah,
investment.
that's the reason why when we talk about our investors, you want to find out what's their game plan, what's their business plan. Are they going to fix and flip, return, sell in 9 months, 12 months, or are they going to keep it for 3 years, 5 years? Because if it's 3 to 5 years, this would be an ideal property. Because right now, I mean, cash on cash is at 1.26. Next year, if they do the same, the same scenario, acquisition cost or initial investment still the same, but they put in 15,000, 20,000, and the rents, they bump it up $500 extra for each unit. That adds up to 4,500 a month, and times 12 it adds up, and then for that,
Right.
cash on cash will bump up as well.
Yeah.
I have a quick question. This right now, the problem that you solve already here is for the apartment actually? Is it for 5 units and more, or it is for any type of the property? For instance, for the commercial or for the residential, single family also.
Mhm.
What
For
type
single-
of properties covers?
Yeah, this one, it covers the specific property that we mentioned, the one in Long Beach. It varies depending on, what property you're going to try to analyze. This is just a basic framework for what to calculate on a 5 to 6 unit. And we ran the numbers based on that property. So if you were to do the same thing on a different property, let's say an office building, or let's say office retail, where the tenant pays for the expenses and then the landlord gets reimbursed, it's going to be different. I mean, cash on cash will probably be higher depending on the initial investment.
Some people, sometimes they ask for single family. They have, for instance, they have guest house,
Mhm.
or they have ADU actually.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. They became an income property. Is that if somebody, make his single family, they convert the parking to the units already. They got a zip code for that one also,
Mhm.
even, and
Mhm.
also they have a guest house sometimes.
Mhm.
Legally or theoretically, is it income property already?
Depending on, are they gonna occupy the single family or they're not? If they're not, then that's considered a full income property where you can do the same thing with this framework with that single family plus ADU as an income property. You can do the same exact thing with this.
We could
This
find the
framework.
cap rate for that one.
Yeah, it's gonna be difficult to find a cap rate like that, because what it is, single family, you have to find out exactly who is, paying for what rents are going for with those type of properties. Like
Right.
like a 3-bedroom or 4-bedroom.
Right.
You gotta find out how much the tenant is paying for that particular space or that property, and how much did the seller buy it for. You can find out
Right.
the average cap rate with that.
Right.
Because pretty much for a single family, the tenant will pay about 75% will pay for their own utilities. It varies. That's why you have to do your research for something like that, for single family, because sometimes the landlord will pay for HOA, or sometimes it's included on the rents.
Right.
That can be reimbursed to the landlord. That's included in the rent from the tenant. I mean, there's a lot of scenarios, and
Right.
the best case scenario is you just have to look at MLS. If it's something like this, a 1 to 4 unit, best case scenario is just look at MLS and see if how much are people paying for 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom, and
Right.
how much the tenants are paying. Or you can go to rentalmeter.com and see how much our rents are in that area. You can just do an assumption.
Right. A question come up when you talk about a 1 to 4 units, less than 5 units actually.
Mhm.
Is units is you assume a duplex, 2 units, or 1 units single family.
Mhm.
A duplex home or triplex or fourplex.
Mhm.
Do you assume this one is a 1 unit in whole, or it is 2 units? Because sometimes I heard that when you talked about 4 units, there are a lot of condo that are just 4 units. You talked about that 4 units, or you want single family that have a there are a triplex, for example. They assume the three units. I'm not
Mhm.
sure I'm right or not.
I don't get your question.
You talked about 1 to 4 units. When you talked about 1 to 4 units, you said that 1 condo or 1 single family.
Yeah.
Which one?
Yeah. Yeah, so it's pretty much 1 to 4 units are considered, depending on the loan. It's 1 to 4 are residential loans. That's the
Right.
reason why we split it up to 1 to 4 and then 5 plus.
Right. This 4 units means four single family or 4 condo apartment units.
Apartments. It can be apartments. It can be 4 single family homes on a lot that's owned by one person.
Exactly, because it happened. I saw that there were a lot that it had 4 single family units. For the family, all of them were family, or it was even even in Torrance, I saw that it was a condo that 4 units. A lot of condo has a 4 units just or
Yeah, I mean, yeah, as long as it's owned by one person and he doesn't live on, well, if it doesn't live on site, doesn't live on one of the units, it's considered an investment. And
right.
you can calculate that correctly. You can calculate that or do the assumptions on that analysis.
And as a general rule, if somebody lived even in a single family or in a apartment units, it's not gonna be income property. If he or she is out of that property, it's gonna be income property. Is that correct? Even somebody somebody lives in a 10 units, have a 10 units, and he lives in a one of them, it's not income property. Even he got the income from that 9 units.
No,
Is that correct?
it's considered income. The only drawback about analyzing a person that lives on site is they're not paying, they're not paying rent, and you're gonna have to assume or do your calculations to where it's pro forma market rents. So let's say it's a 5 unit and an owner owns one of the units.
Right.
And they're all 2-bedroom units for 2,500. So they pay 2,500 a month for each, except for his. So what you do is you calculate based on the market rents for that
Right.
particular unit. That's how lenders calculate it if there's an owner user on site. Is they calculate it by finding how much are the rents for that area, and they do their due diligence based on that market rent, because you really can't determine, okay, so since each unit's paying 2,500 and this tenant, this owner doesn't pay, it's gonna throw off all your assumptions on finance. So they do a pro forma rent on that particular unit.
And my question is, all you talked about, all the cases that you talked, is about selling the property or about the renting that one? It is about the selling. Is that correct?
It give or take. I mean, you can. I mean, from this, it's just analyzing it. It doesn't have to be. I don't have to. I mean, from my presentation, it's more knowing what the numbers are. You based on, let's say, if your client gives you all the information, you can do your calculations based on what I just discussed.
Right.
Or you can say, okay, these are the numbers that this listing agent gave me. Let me do my due diligence and see what is the accurate, or what do I think it is. I mean, for this is just to know exactly what the framework is, and you can do your calculations based on that, or you can go with what the listing agent gave you or what the landlord gave you.
Another question. Sometimes in the development, there are 3 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, studio, 1 bedroom. Is it possible, have you seen that have a different cap rates for 4 bedrooms, for 3 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, studio, or they mix it for calculating a just single cap rate?
Yeah, from my experience, for like a 4-bedroom, 3-bedroom, it's all based on numbers. It doesn't really matter what kind of unit mix and cap rate. It's a matter of how much income you receive.
Great. All of the, investment actually, all
Yeah.
of the units and income.
Yeah, yeah. So if it's in one building, if you have a 5-unit, one of them's a 4-unit, one of them's a 4-bedroom, and one's a studio. It's just a matter of how much income that the landlord receives, and then you can do your calculations based on what he gives you, operating expense, and then you can calculate that with the average, the cap rate, and then you can
Right.
compare and contrast what other properties are selling for that type of unit mix.
Right. Thank you.
Any other questions?
No, we're good.
All right, yeah, feel free to give me a call or, I don't have my info on here, but let's see here, how do here, I'll text you guys my information.
Also, if you don't mind, can you email us the PowerPoint that you put together so we have the information?
Sure thing. I'll tell Holland,
Yeah,
I'll tell Holland to give me your email, and then I'll send you guys my, the LOI, the presentation, all that stuff.
okay, perfect.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, guys, thank you for coming.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye-bye.